Welcome to the Baby Names Podcast. I'm Jennifer Moss.
And I'm Mallory Mosscats.
And we're the creators of babynames.com. We'd like to welcome our listeners from all over the world. Thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the show, Mallory and I created the website babynames.com in 1996. And it has been the #1 site for names and meanings ever since.
We made history.
We did. And now we've started this podcast to dish about celebrity baby names, cool name subjects, and take your questions on names and naming. Today's name subject is brand names as baby names. Now, first, I'm going to preface this again by something I brought up in the last episode. Parents are becoming much more daring in their baby naming practices, now more than ever. For example, in 1950, a third of the babies born were given a top 10 name. It was important at that time, culturally, to conform and fit in. But in the last 20 years, our culture here in the U.S. has changed. It's becoming much more acceptable to be different. And we've also put bullying laws into place, and therefore parents are becoming a little more bold in their baby naming choices. They're using names that are more unique, and instead of a third of the babies having a top 10 name now, less than 1% of babies born in the past 3 to 5 years have been given a top 10 name. So that means that parents are now turning to different sources for baby names. And one of those sources is brand names. They'll hear a brand name they like and be like, oh, that would be a great name for my baby. So because people identify the name with the brand, then a lot of upscale brands are very popular for baby naming. For example, they would use the name Chanel, but probably not Charmin.
There are high-end baby names. So examples include Portia or Porsche, depending on your opinion.
I know. I never can find anyone that can agree on that. Is it Porsche or is it Portia?
Well, Portia was the originally way to pronounce it. It's from Greek mythology, but it's also from Portia Catanus, who was the wife of Brutus, who was the daughter of Cato, and Brutus was the most famous of Julius Caesar's assassin, and she was also known for her suicide. She swallowed hot coals.
Ew.
So I don't know if you really want to name your baby Portia.
Well, Portia's also a Shakespeare name, isn't it?
I think it is, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Some other high-end brand names include Bentley, which has become really popular from the baby of one of the TV stars on 16 and Pregnant, I believe. Mercedes.
Armani, Lexus. And
Hummer?
No, not Hummer. That can be construed as Nancy 17. And don't use Hoover either. I'm not going to say that.
Folks, do not use Hummer or Hoover for your baby name. Okay, there's also athlete, tough names, weapons like Remington, Harley, Nike, Puma, and Colt. Those are very popular for baby boy names, specifically in the southern states.
I think there's some girl Harleys out there, too. I've seen that in some celebrity baby names.
That's true. There are some girl Harleys out there. And then, of course, as we mentioned before, technology is having an impact on baby names like Apple, Facebook, hashtag, Dell, Pixel, Siri, Linux, and of course Mac. That's the easiest one because it's a name.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Facebook is ridiculous. I think maybe there's one in all of maybe not even the United States. I think that was Egypt.
It was because they were just really grateful to Facebook for the communication it provided in the uprising. And that was back in 2011. And so one family decided to name their baby Facebook because of the political connection.
Gwyneth Paltrow named her baby Apple. What's Apple's last name? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's Martin because she married Chris Martin. But I think it was because I think the she's friends with Fiona Apple, and so she saw it more as a name than a brand name.
Okay. What are some surnames that became brands?
Some of the surnames that have become brand names that have become baby names are like Hershey, Chanel again, Dior, Versace, anything that's more upscale.
I wouldn't use Hershey, and I definitely don't think that's upscale. And I wouldn't use it for the same reason as we don't use Deuce anymore.
How about Godiva then?
Oh, Godiva? Maybe, but that makes me think of Lady Godiva and being naked, running horses through the town.
And then we have personal brand names. That means personal names that have become brand names. So that's going the opposite direction, like Oprah, Madonna, Cher, and Kesha with a $sign.
What about people using symbols like Kesha? Is that even legal?
No.
Was Prince actually allowed to change his name to that symbol?
No. Actually, naming laws in the U.S. are by state. And if you look them up, there are some really crazy naming laws out there that have hung over from, the 1800s and the 1900s. But most often, you can't use names of like religious figures. I mean, other than Jesus, obviously. Derogatory terms or obscene phrases. And some special characters or foreign characters are even banned. It all depends on what is able to be input into digital forms, basically. Numbers, trademarks, hyphens, asterisks, and some states don't even allow apostrophes. So going back to brand names, you can't name your kid Toys R Us. Or maybe you can now. Didn't they all close?
I don't know.
But what I think is really dumb is if you use two names to create a brand name, because that's kind of making your kid's name a joke, like Jack Daniels or Calvin Klein, Jackson 5, things like that. I've always said don't make your kid's name a joke.
Yeah, I've heard of Cincinnati Red, NYLIC, or what was that one? I never knew how that was.
Nylic, I guess.
Nylic?
The father worked for New York Life Insurance Company, so they used the acronym Nylic.
And again, Harley is okay, but Harley Davidson, what do you think of Kelly Green?
I knew a Kelly Green in college. It was a guy. He was very talented. He was a singer and a songwriter. And I never did ask him if he liked his name. I still don't like making your child's name a pun. If somebody's going to laugh when you introduce yourself, then I think that does a disservice to the child. And I would also say not to name your child after alcohol or alcoholic drinks. I mean, like Margarita is acceptable because it's a real name, and so is Brandy. But I wouldn't do something like Brandy Alexander.
Speaking of Alexander, do you think we're going to have an increase in Alexanders and Hamiltons? Do the hit musical Hamilton? I saw it last weekend. Oh, it was so good. And I can't get the music out of my head, that's for sure. What do you think?
I think so. I think specifically Hamilton because the name Lincoln has become so popular for boys and girls. Definitely Hamilton. Alexander is one of those, what we call little black dress names, that is so classic that it's always in style.
That's true.
And then finally, what I think is clever is there are parents that were alums of Louisiana State University, which is LSU, that named their son Ellis Hugh. So if you say it real fast, it's Ellis Hugh.
Dorky.
Okay, let's move on to names in the news. Speaking of brand names and creating brands, we are back to the Jenner Kardashians. I mean, I wish we didn't have to keep reporting on these people, but the Insider reports that Kylie Jenner has named her new makeup line after her daughter. It's called the Weather Collection. And if you remember, her daughter's name is Stormy.
Ugh.
And so she has named her eyeshadow palettes Eye of the Storm and Calm Before the Storm. Now, millennials think this is so damn cute, they are throwing money at her for the products. But me, I think it might have been a little calculated. Now, what can I name my baby that I can incorporate into a makeup line? What do you think, Mal?
I think it's terrible. You know me. First of all, I thought Stormy was the worst name in the universe that you could name a baby. And now, of course, she's naming a product after it. I agree. It is all a calculated maneuver.
What do you guys think out there? Let us know on social with hashtag BabyNamesPod.
We want to hear from you.
We do.
All right, you guys. Well, this is kind of exciting. Khloe Kardashian must have tuned into our last episode of the Baby Names podcast because she and basketball player Tristan Thompson are now throwing around names from the Black Panther for their soon-to-be baby girl. I know. Tristan has suggested Nakia. I called it.
You totally called that one.
To Okoye Tashuri. He told Khloe it might be cool to do a spin on the name Wakanda, the fictional nation where Black Panther takes place. The scuttle is Khloe is seriously considering it. She is due in a couple of weeks, so we'll see.
The funny thing is that there's a town named Wakanda in Illinois, and they've been receiving tons of press. It's spelled Wauconda, Wakanda, Illinois. But like I said, they're receiving a lot of attention because it's pronounced very similar to Wakanda. So let's talk about America's favorite couple, Chip and Joanna Gaines from HGTV's Fixer Upper.
This is America's favorite couple.
Yeah, sounds like you never watch HGTV. Hey, did you know Trading Spaces is coming back? I am so excited about that. With the original cast.
Woo.
Anyway, Chip and Joanna are expecting their 5th child. Chip shared a video on his Twitter where he asks the little boy with help to name their baby, which is going to be a boy. He asked for a D name, and the boy came up with a most interesting suggestion. Now, as an aside, if you ask a kid for their advice, you better be ready for it. My mom asked me what to name the baby, who became Mallory.
Yay.
And my 5-year-old self wanted to name her Marilyn Jaja Moss. I think that I was conjuring up like the most glamorous women I could think of, Marilyn Monroe and Zsa Zsa Gabor. Mal, could you have dealt with the name Marilyn Jaja?
Now, I do like a little drama in my life, but that is over the top.
Anyway, the boys suggested the name Dragon for Chip and Joanna. But that's kind of funny because as one of our Twitter followers, Gabrielle Nash, pointed out, one of their sons is already named Drake, which means dragon. So anyway, their current brood is named Duke, Drake, Ella, and Emmy. Appears they have some kind of naming convention like D for boys and E for girls. So let's name storm some names for Chip and Joanna. What do you think, Mal?
Okay, so clearly they like names with D's and K's in them for boys. What about the name Derek? It means people ruler, although I'm not sure what else you would rule. Fairies? Anyway, it reminds me of Derek Jeter from the New York Yankees. Not my favorite team, but definitely my favorite game, baseball. And I'm going to take a second to plug my favorite team. Go Cubs!
Go Cubs! Irish model and TV personality Vogue Williams, another brand name, revealed that she is 4 months pregnant and thrilled to be expecting her first baby with fiancé Spencer Matthews. The DJ revealed that they did the pregnancy test while on holiday in the south of France. Must be nice. Now, I'm not convinced that Vogue is her real first name. Her siblings are Amber, Allison, and Frederick, which are pretty conservative names, and then Vogue, and she happens to become a model. I couldn't find anything about her given name or her real name, her birth certificate name. So listeners over there in Ireland, write in and let us know if you know if Vogue Williams is her real name. Email us at podcast@babynames.com.
All right. Well, let's see what else is in the news. Rapper, musician, and TV personality Cardi B has denied all claims that she is pregnant, but sources close to her say she definitely has a bun in the oven and due in July. Cardi's real name is, let me see how to pronounce this one, Balkala Salmanzar. And speaking of alcoholic baby names, Cardi B's sister name is Hennessy.
Really, stay away from alcohol. I mean, it's just, not that it's bad, but I mean, there's just so many, it's got baggage. I think alcohol's got baggage. A story came out about an Afghani couple who actually named their baby son Donald Trump 2.5 years ago, even before DT became president of the U.S. At the time, Jamila and Syed Asadullah said that they chose the name for their third child because they admired him and wanted to honor the real estate mogul and TV star. But since the child was born, the couple has received a lot of flack for the name, obviously. First of all, anger from their family because it's not a Muslim name, but also ridicule from their community because, well, Donald Trump. What do you think about naming people after famous names, Mal?
You know, I think it's given the kid a lot to follow. I've seen it for both people to look up to, like Benjamin Franklin, but also people who are not as popular, too. Either way, it could take away from the kid's own identity, kind of like naming a kid after a father. Grandma Maggie always said to let a kid have his or her own name and own self, you know?
Yeah, she did. She didn't even like naming a kid after a father, which is actually becoming less and less popular. By the way, speaking of Grandma Maggie was our mother, and she was trained in early childhood development. She had a Q&A blog on our site for many, many years. It's still up if you have questions about parenting or childcare. Obviously, you can't ask her anymore because she has since passed, but you can look up all of her old articles, and we've also put them into ebooks, which are available on Amazon.com, and we've separated them into subjects like toilet training, eating, getting your kids to sleep, single parenting, parenting conflicts, parenting interference like from in-laws, teaching limits with love, grandparenting, sibling rivalry, and step parenting. So if you're interested in any of these topics, each one of these ebooks is only 99 cents. In Amazon, just type the phrase Ask Grandma Maggie in the search bar and you'll find them. So speaking of Grandma Maggie and Q&A, on to our names Q&A segment. So here's our first letter from Shannon. Dear Jennifer and Mallory, I was recently reading a Thomas the Train book to my daughter and encountered an intriguing name, Rheneas. Do you know if this name has any history or background, or was it simply made up for the series? Thank you. Well, Thomas the Tank Engine was first a book series before it was a TV show, and it was created by Reverend Wilbert Awdry, and they were first written in the 1940s. Now, when I did my research online, one name enthusiast posited that if you break down the name with Welsh components, Ren, R-E-N, means ridge or division, and Eas means a cascade or waterfall. So basically the name would mean divided waterfall. I kind of think that's reaching, though, and I think he most probably just used the components and created the name for the books. Other Thomas the Tank Engine names are obviously Thomas, Skarloey, Edward Henry, Sir Handel, Wilfred, Gordon, Coldy, James, Percy, Toby, Duck, Oliver, and Stepney. So as you can see, some are real names and some are fantastical.
I kind of like Duck. Duck Cats.
That's a Mad Men name, Duck. Audrey wrote 26 books in the Railways series before retiring in 1972, but it took off beginning in the UK and then in the US, and it's all now owned by Mattel. And speaking of brands, it makes close to $1.6 billion in sales every year. I can't believe that. So instead of divided waterfall, I'd say it meant railroad windfall. That's as good a meaning as we can come up with.
Yeah, and back to Rheneas, I don't like it because to me it sounds like renal glands. And because I'm a nurse practitioner, you know what? No one wants to be known as renal glands. Sorry, I promise, no holds barred.
Okay, don't name your kid Rheneas, but it is kind of a cool fictional name.
Kind of like Renesmee.
Yeah, Renesmee from the Twilight series. Okay, Mal, take the next one.
Dear Jennifer and Mallory, what do you think of the names Elfie and Galinda? They are from the musical Wicked, and my husband and I are both musical theater fans. Elfie is short for Elphaba, but I think people would associate that too closely with elephant. Plus, Elfie is so much cuter. What do you think? Wow.
I hated Wicked. I think I am the only one. Well, me and my daughter are the only two who hated Wicked. And maybe we just saw a bad cast. I don't know, but I didn't like the music. We were bored. We didn't care. And I know that was one of your favorites, and you're a big musical theater fan, so go for it.
How did you hate the musical Wicked? The musical Wicked was one of the best musicals of all time. Maybe because I'm a huge Wizard of Oz fan and it meant a lot to me. But the music is great. The casting is great. You know, you had Idina Menzel. Oh my god! But
I didn't have Idina Menzel.
Well, I mean,
and we didn't have Kristen Chenoweth, so maybe we just got a bad cast.
Maybe you had a bad cast. I don't know, but they were fantastic, and it was just such a great musical. But back to the question. First of all, do you really want to name your baby Elfie? Because again, You're going back to Elfin. What if you have a big girl like me and her name is Elfie? You know, that's just not, doing any child a favor.
I had a couple that contacted me that wanted to name their daughter Pixie. And for the same reason, I said, do not do it. I mean, that's cute when they're small and when they're a toddler, but can Pixie dominate the boardroom? And what if she is not small and fairy-like? It's just an unreasonable expectation to put on a child.
And back to Galinda and Rheneas, that just sounds like gland. And again, you don't want to be known as a gland. If you really like the name Galinda, go with Glinda, the original from the book. I think that's what you want to do. Like
Glinda?
Yeah, exactly. But skip Elfie.
Okay, that's it, folks. Keep tuning in to the Baby Names podcast for the latest on everything names and naming. And if you're listening from iTunes, Apple Podcasts, please subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. And a big thank you to all the people who took the time to leave such great 5-star reviews and ratings. And don't forget to visit babynames.com to find out what your name means, create your favorite name lists, and gab with other name enthusiasts on our message boards. You don't even need to be pregnant.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I want cookies now.
Ooh, cookies.
Thin mints.
Mmm.
I'm naming my next baby after Girl Scout cookies. Do-si-do moss. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you do that.
Okay, bye.
Bye.